Okay, welcome. I'm so excited to have Leslie on Rapid Manifestation today. She is an amazing astrologer and mama, and we got to meet just last month. So I'm super excited that you are here on the podcast today. So welcome.
Thank you, Monica, for having me. And just to breathe in and embody like how special that was to get to meet in real life, like during the middle of a pandemic when we've been kind of online friends for a while, and then to actually make that in-person connection. That's huge.
So huge. It was wonderful. It was so wonderful because I feel like we don't get to do that, and more. I mean, the online community, thank you all for tuning in, but more and more people want to see me in person, and they want to breathe together. They want to yoga together. They want to connect together. So it's like, it's so nice just to hug you and talk to you and look in your eyes.
Same.
Yeah. So Leslie, I wanted you to talk today about astrology, and maybe start with telling us your story, how you got into astrology and how you've used it for your own self and your own healing and growth.
Yeah, definitely. Oh my gosh, astrology. It is my life, really. So my name is Leslie Tagorda, and I call myself a brand astrologer. And what that means specifically is that I'm looking at astrology and how we present ourselves. How do we identify ourselves? How do we tap into that intrinsic power that's already in us that is so easy to deny because of shoulda, woulda, couldas? There's like all these different reasons where we don't really actually value the power that already lives in us. So then we spend and waste and expend all of this energy trying to copy and compare and pretend to being somebody else. When we think about this healing process, to me, one of these ways that we come back to our self-identity healing is stripping away and revealing who we are meant to be, because we get so many mixed messages from society and culture about this very like narrow path of what it is to be successful. Like you need to make this type of money, you need to drive this type of car, you have to have this type of body type, this color skin, this certain age. And it's like, that is such bull, but we take that on. And so no wonder there is so much dis-ease in our lives, and like who are we? How are we supposed to show up? And so astrology, like if you believe, and I believe that your listeners believe in this, that our souls chose a time and a place to be born, and our natal charts, which is a map of the stars and the celestials and the planets at the time from the place of your first breath here on Earth. Like everybody has this unique star map. And when we can tap into the lessons and the gifts of our star map, that is our soul's blueprint. That is who we are meant to be.
And I have to like just jump in real quick and say that I've taken a couple of your courses, and I feel very blessed that I have done the work. And when I was taking your course, I was telling you, God, I take so many courses that I never finish. My Aquarius Pisces.
Yes.
I'm like, ooh, butterflies, what's next? But I really enjoyed it. And it really makes me think a lot when I was starting the podcast and when I'm deciding if I'm going to teach something. And I remember you telling me something, and I want everybody to hear this, is that I had said, I want to do healings and meditations and such, but it's just so overwhelming because I'm not always in the flow. And you're like, well, you can just record the podcast whenever you want, when you feel in flow, and then you upload them. And I was like, oh, it was so powerful to get that. It's not approval, but just like that feedback, like, hey, Monica, there is a different way. And I always thought it was a certain way, like you said, from society, from other people telling me it had to be a certain way. I didn't know that I could do things in my own way, in my own time, and my own flow. And I think that's what you've taught me, is like how to be in my flow as a
Yes.
Aquarius that wants to be free.
Yes. Oh my gosh. I hear that a lot, this idea of like validation, especially like if we're running a business and we've connected online and we're learning all these tools and these strategies, we're going to rub up against people that tell us that we have to do this one way in order to be successful. And you go through that path because you see them as successful and you want to just be like them, and then you take on all these things and you're like, this doesn't fit me. And so how do we come back to how we are supposed to do things? How do we see ourselves as the expert and authority in our businesses, no matter if you're a new business owner or an experienced business owner? Like, how do we see ourselves as the expert?
Yeah, there's just so many different ways. I mean, there's so many different things going in our ears all the time, but to bring in astrology, I think, is a really powerful one to make you remember. For me, it's about remembering, right? Is
Yes.
remembering who we are and why we're here.
Well, you have your Aquarius sun in the 12th house with the Pisces rising, right?
And Pisces moon.
And Pisces moon, right? And so it's beautiful to remember, like to recall just that the Aquarius and that Pisces energy, your big three, like the sun, your innovative ways of creating friendly connections and bringing together soul-centered communities, because your Aquarius sun is like radiating best in that 12th house of the soul of it doesn't even feel like this remembering, but it's a connection of the past, present, and future where it meets right here.
I like that. The past, present, and future where it meets. Yes, in the moment, in the present.
In the moment, and that's your flow. And that Pisces, your Pisces rising and your Pisces moon in the first house, like of your identity. It's like you love guiding and leading others from this dreamy place, of this emotionally connected place. Like you just have this like such this visionary, dreamy, yet innovative, different way of doing things that's not your typical, woo-woo yoga.
Right. Right. Well, and I think you're the first person that said it in a nice way, that I have that dreamy, like I probably can coach anyone I talk to in the moment, but do I need to do that? I think you were the first one that was like, do you have boundaries of giving? Right.
Yeah.
So that's another thing that I really learned from you, is like, oh, and I really check that now. There's a lot of things I've learned through the astrology and learning from you. It's like, yeah, I want to do that. But did someone ask my advice or my coaching, and do I need to drain my spirit right now?
Oh, yeah. Well, I noticed that Aquarius, because I'm Aquarius also, right? And my husband's also an Aquarius. And like if somebody shares a problem with us, like we go straight into fix it mode, right? Like we want to get to the root of the problem. We want to solve it. And then we have to like step back and go, wait, is that our job? No, that's not our job. Unless they're asking.
Right. And I have a twin sister that's Aquarius. So that's even, she'll text me and say just yesterday, oh, do this, this, and this. And I'm like, did I ask for information? But it's fine. Love you, sis. She'll be
not my job. Not my job.
Not my job. But that's the reason why I did want to bring you in for the February podcast, was because you are Aquarius. And I feel like Aquarians, we have this special connection.
Yes. Aquarians understand each other. I don't think anybody else understands Aquarians quite so well.
Right. So can you share with everybody what, like as service providers, as coaches, as teachers, I have nurses that listen to the podcast. Why do you think they would want to learn more about astrology? How would it benefit them?
Yeah, well, knowing your chart and knowing that your ideal customer embodies that Virgo archetype, because you're Pisces rising and the opposite of Pisces is Virgo. And so those are your like soul customers. Those are your soul community. And that Virgo energy is looking for wholeness, right? If you know anything about Virgo energy, it can get stuck in this place of trying to be perfect. But when we look at like your healing practitioners, like your yoga teachers, their nurses, these are all innate healers who are looking at mind, body, soul integration to create wholeness, to create effectiveness. And so if you find yourself as like this listener who's like, oh yeah, I just want to make things more whole, I want to make things more complete, and getting away from this place of perfection with that wholeness, and using astrology is like really understanding what your radiance is and how you can feel free to radiate that sun's superpowers in the what you do. And then your moon sign, how you need to feel in order to feel emotionally secure. And then your rising sign, how do you step up and be noticed and be visible? And so when we combine these three pieces, when we simplify to digest these three core foundational energies in our charts, then everything else kind of is of service to that. And so for your Virgo archetypes, it's like keeping it simple, keeping it effective, allowing a lot of space, looking at the whole mind, body, and spirit, and not just this one place where we're going to like overwork and overdo and overanalyze. So being really watching out for that. And so how do we like feel into the climate of the energy? Like, I feel like Virgos, when I think about the Virgo archetype, and the listeners here, you may have a Virgo rising, you may have a lot of Virgo in your chart, and you may not. It's not to say that you're not a Virgo, but there's this embodying part of you wanting to heal. And we even talked before we hit record about how everything comes back to healing. And for your ideal customers, for your listeners, that healing is about wholeness. How can we make whole?
Right. Because I feel a lot of them are stuck in the little bits and pieces, right? There's all these little things and then they get stuck. I mean, I watch it, not even the Virgo, it could be Virgo, Leo, like I watch and I'm like, wow, what's getting you so stuck? Like I see it like these little blocks, but it's like it can all be together as one if we don't get fixated, like you said, on one specific thing. Because I do see that's like, oh, this week or this month, I'm focusing on just my health, or this I'm focusing on just my spirit. And it's like, no, it's like a whole complete system. And that's kind of what I teach with the breath work is really once you tune into your breath and release all of that busyness of the mind and connect the past, the present, right, and everything together, then you can start to feel and embody that wholeness, if that makes sense.
100%. And when you were talking about that places of stuckness for your listeners, to me that place of stuckness from them is like getting caught in the details, getting stuck in the weeds, trying to like feeling that need that they have to overwork in order for something to be good, when Virgo-ness is not about overworking. It's about, what you said, the whole system, being able to breathe into your mind, body, and soul to find that place of trust in one's body. I imagine that so many of your listeners override their body's cues.
Oh yeah, the first thing I'm like, take a bath, go take a bath, go take a walk, go, and I feel so much spaciousness, or I guess I've learned that, being over 40 now is like, I need to take all of this time. I need to be in the bath. I need to be in the hot tub and breathe. But what I see is like the hustle. When I watch like my clients, I'm like, whoa, you are hustling. Did you go outside today? Like or did you breathe? It's like, and they love coming and like laying down and doing the breath work because they're like, whoa, I didn't even feel this connection at all today. And it's amazing that you know so much about this, Leslie. And I feel like I've learned so much from just knowing like my rising. Maybe we could talk a little bit more about that, especially those here that are trying to be more visible and really connect with their soul clients. I don't think I never understood that my rising was like so important.
Oh my goodness. Our rising signs are so important. Our sun, our moon, and our rising are our big three, and they create the stable foundation from which everything else grows. And so again, like they have their different roles. Again, the sun is just like what you naturally do so well that sometimes it's hard to come to terms that you're so good at something because you just dismiss it because it's so natural, right? Your ability to make friends, your ability, like for you with your Aquarius sun, right? And the moon sign, again, is how do we need to feel? And this is not just like a luxury. This is like a necessity. This is a core need. And so that feeling part, we tend to override that feeling part. Like oh, well, we don't have time to feel. We got to keep going, right? And so the sun and the moon, but they dance together and they form this kind of like perpetual engine, like this infinite engine within you. And then the shell of that, the covering of that is the rising sign. And our rising sign in traditional astrology, people say it's our personality. It's how people perceive us. And okay, that's super easy to understand. But in our work and in our businesses, our rising sign then becomes our identity and the role, the way that we are meant to lead, how we lead. And I feel that especially if like we have like water rising signs like Cancer, Pisces, and Scorpio, this is like where our culture doesn't value emotional labor and intuitive labor. And so when we have these water rising signs, they are almost always the most resistant to seeing themselves as a leader because society has told us that we're not leaders. Right? That just by doing caretaking or just by hugging or just by creating safe spaces for growth to happen or by doing soul work, the Pisces would be doing the soul work and the visionary leadership. The Scorpio would be like creating, like going into the depths and creating like the emotional transformation. And the Cancers are the ones who are creating safe spaces to nourish. And those generally have not been really valued. And so I notice if you have one of these water rising signs, you might not even identify as a leader, but I want to give you permission that, yes, Cancer rising sign, you lead with a hug. Yes, Scorpio rising, you lead with going deep and doing that transformation. And yes, Pisces rising, like Monica, you lead by doing soul work. You lead by interconnecting and like creating a vision and a dream. Like, it's so beautiful to hear that permission, like, wow, I get to lead that way. And so we think about that leadership, then it informs our identity. So like, when you are working on your podcast cover, when you're working on your website design, really honing into that rising sign as that kind of first step of attraction. And then also in your process of the things that you're doing, with that Pisces rising, when you're bringing your people together, like you literally create this, like, I can see you creating this like energetic, like iridescent magical bubble that everybody is stepping into.
Yeah.
Like as that Pisces rising.
And it's interesting because I think before the age of 35, or let's just say 10 years ago, I knew I was a teacher, but I wouldn't say I was a leader. But there was just one point where I took that initiative, like, well, I'm going to lead now from my soul and speak my own truth, because I heard, I would hear that from my own soul family. It's like, you need to share with people like what your truth is. And if they don't like it, then that's their own thing,
That's not your people.
It all of a sudden happened, and I have my dog barking and the bell ringing now, but that's okay.
It's all good. It's all good.
It's life. But I do remember that. It's like, wow, that's what it was. Yeah.
And the more we I know, like for a lot of us, when we're in our businesses and if we want to get more clients, we get really, really hung up on like, okay, how can I attract more clients? I need to go get out more clients. I need to do all this marketing. I need to do all of these things. And I'm like, hold on, have you stepped into your own power yet? Because once you step fully into that rising sign, that potential, that intrinsic power that's already in you, you just become the magnet and you start attracting all of those right people that you're meant to serve. It's kind of a different way of thinking about it. It's not about like going after and chasing all the clients. It's actually about becoming a better you. And it changes with age, but I've noticed that I have young clients who are like not even their first Saturn return, like in their middle 20s and things like that. And I see them like stepping into their astrology and their power. And I'm just like, wow, how life would have been had taken a different trajectory if I had just known this so much earlier. But that wasn't part of my trajectory. I needed to go through all of those
Right.
lessons to be where I am now.
My mom, I think because she knew me and my sister were such connectors, like she could see that we were always like playful and looking and investigating and like not being in the norm. She actually, on my 18th birthday, she worked at Sonoma State University. She gave me a huge astrology book that I read, and it would show like these different paths in my life. And it's very interesting. My twin sister, she stayed in we're only 10 minutes apart. She stayed in town at 18. I moved to Hawaii. It's just like there, and that's the thing, we're all so different.
Well, even with twins, we're thinking about our natal charts. I know when we met together, we were kind of comparing because there are things that move really quickly in our natal charts, and these little shifts can have even if you're a twin or a triplet, can have way different results in the soul of the person that comes through.
Yeah, it's so amazing. And I think, one thing I want you to touch upon is, one thing that was hard for me was really looking at the shadows of my astrology report and like seeing those and knowing those. Can you talk a little bit more about that? Like, because I know that's a part of one of your courses, and you're going and you're looking, and it's a hard thing to do, like to look at those for me, maybe not for other people, but I remember I was like, oh, like, wow.
I know it's interesting. Like I have this tendency to throw people into the deep end with their shadow work, but because I know that they can swim really well. And so this idea of looking at our shadows is that when we're looking at our astrology, there are many different ways to look at our astrology. And if we just look at kind of traditional astrology, or we listen to a lot of fear-mongering astrologers, you're going to be afraid that the sky is falling because everything now all of a sudden is dangerous. Right. And so if we have a lot of squares or a lot of oppositions, or we have like a Pluto conjunction, like these, the maleficence in the chart, and we focus on those energies, well, of course, just the darkness is going to come through. And what I want to do is I want to reframe things, because there's no such thing as like negative, like bad or good in a chart. They all have their role and they all have their meaning, and we get to choose. That's where our agency and our freedom comes through. It's not fate. We get to choose how we express these things in our chart. So, if somebody has a lot of squares and they're like, oh my gosh, I have so many squares, my life is like destined to be hard. And it's like, well, squares have a lot of momentum. They have a lot of change. And when you can learn how to harness that change and start to understand the patterns that keep coming up, all of a sudden you're able to fast forward through a lot of things and do a lot of things in a really quick time. Or if you're like, oh, I have all these trines, my life is so easy. Well, the same thing with that. If you have all these trines, which are supportive relationships between energies, if you're just resting on your laurels because everything is so easy, you don't get anything done.
Right. So like that's like I say every challenge is a gift, right? So yes. If you're just like, oh, this is life, and but there's so many different things that can happen. What do you think is the number one is the way to say it, or the most important for someone that's just starting? Because I know that's what I hear from people, like, why do I need to learn astrology, and why is it important for me? And what do you think is the simplest explanation for somebody?
Yeah, I think that astrology really goes into like two different categories. Natal astrology, the astrology that you were born with, gives you like this deep sense of self-awareness and self-knowing. Right. I know that when I meet a new client and I'm going through their chart, I always get the same comment. It's like, wow, I feel so seen. Like, you understand me more than anybody else knows me. And I'm like, well, I just met you. I know you through your chart. And so when you gain understanding of your own natal chart, then you get a better, it's not judgment anymore. It's understanding. It's like, oh, like my child with his Virgo moon. And I'm always like, gosh, Rocket, why are you being so frustrating because these socks don't fit? You say you have no socks that ever feel comfortable. And then I remember, oh, Virgo moon. He needs it to be perfect. I'm like, okay, sweetie, we're going to go find some new socks tomorrow. Right.
Yeah.
Like there's this sense of self-understanding. So giving yourself kindness when you are able to use your chart now, not as excuses either, right? Like that's the other side of like, we're not here to blame our chart. Like, oh, well, I'm just a spacey Aquarius so that I don't have to like take responsibility.
Right.
Like, no, that is not where we're going either. And so self-assessment and understanding. And then the other part is understanding and working with the natural rhythms that are in the collective, like where the stars and the planets are at this time. So just like the weather report, right? If it's going to rain, you're going to grab your umbrella, you're going to put away your suede shoes, and you're going to be prepared. And so when we understand the cosmic energies, we get to say like, oh, it's raining today. The energy is this way. So then I'm going to adjust my schedule and I'm going to work with the energy so I can actually like collect that rain to put, so I could like, collect it for future watering and reserve those energies. So it's about natural timing and it's also about self-understanding. And to
Yeah.
me, it just adds such another layer to living and healing and being.
Well, and I think for me, sometimes I'm like, I just intuitively don't feel good. And then I'm like, what's going on? Now I'm like, what's going on out there?
Yeah.
Because it's just like, I feel just like in my seat, like a little antsy, and then I can kind of check it out, like what's going on. And I know, everybody's on the Mercury retrograde. That's what we hear all the time is
Yep.
like, well, it's Mercury retrograde. And I tell people it's just about communication, like the communication channels. That's how I describe it now. It's like some of us will have a little bit ease, some of us won't, but we just got to like slow down and listen more and really connect with that. But what do you think about Mercury? You wanted to say anything about Mercury retrogrades?
Yeah, I love Mercury retrogrades, and we're in the middle of one right now. It'll end on February 3rd. And Mercury retrogrades, like you said, that's perfect. Like the role of Mercury is to communicate, it's to understand, it's to perceive, it's supposed to share information. And when Mercury goes retrograde, it's our time to reset and rethink and reorganize things. And so if you're still rushing around trying to get all these things done, well, guess what? Mercury retrograde is like it's like you wearing your suede shoes out in a flood. Like that's why would you work against the energy? But when you're like, oh, it's Mercury retrograde, well, you know what? I'm gonna go rethink this thing. I'm going to go take some time and not rush to make a decision. I'm going to like pad my schedule so I'm not rushing from one place to the next.
Mm-hmm.
It's just about like really working with the seasons. Like, why would you wear a bikini in the middle of winter? Like, I don't know.
Right. But we do see it's like you're pushing against a wall. You were saying like wearing sandals in a flood. I mean, in Hawaii we do that, but
yeah. Or like not suede sandals. Suede. you got your slippers.
We got our slippers on. But no, it's interesting, Leslie, because I watch people do that. And I was born on a Mercury retrograde, so I'm a little bit different, but I think I just observe more and I'm not pushing. I'm like, okay, I'm feeling in the moment, and the moments take a little bit longer. That's what I noticed. Like the time and space where things probably came really quickly to me during this time. I'm like, I'm going to wait.
with your Mercury retrograde natally, like meaning born during a Mercury retrograde, that means that when Mercury goes retrograde 19% of the year, like you return home, you're like, oh, I like this. This is familiar to me. And so 19% of the population has this Mercury retrograde, where if you think about the way Mercury works, because it's like a logical planet, it's in our mind and in our intellect, and we're logicking things, we're thinking about things, we're like, receiving information. But in Mercury, it doesn't go through the mind first. When Mercury is retrograde, it doesn't go through the mind first. It actually goes through the body first. And once your body understands, then you can logically understand it.
And for me, I have to like put on a lot of music, music. I'm doing a lot of journaling right now. I feel like a little bit unsettled. Like I can't make decisions without that right now. I don't know if that makes sense. Like I have to put on a little music, find a little flow, but to get rid of the stuckness. I
Yeah.
think that's what happens.
And don't feel rushed that you have to make a decision right now.
Yeah. And as a manifesting generator, going to human design, right? Another form of a wonderfulness. I really have to like stop and not do things like right away. I have to just wait for it.
Yeah.
You're a man. Are you? No,
Projector.
You're a projector. I remember. Yes. Yes. But I think that's a lot of us. We think, okay, we're entrepreneurs or service providers. We're going to do everything someone else says instead of taking inventory of who we truly are and self-assess and be in the moment. I think that learning astrology is like the perfect way to do that. And taking the time to do it.
Yeah, it's so potent, it's so powerful, and it's so full of deep insight.
And you have, I mean, what days does your podcast come out? Share a little bit about that.
Oh, yes. So I have a podcast called The Savvy Luminary, Astrology for Entrepreneurs and Visionaries. And that I actually have 2 episodes a week because there's so much information. So on Sundays, I drop the Business Starcast. It's kind of like the astrology weather, the forecast. And then on Wednesdays, I usually drop a teaching episode. And so I think coming up right now is all Aquarius season and how to create your vision in your business.
I was on your podcast last year for my birthday. And I remember you're like, go, do it, do your thing, share with the world. But I think that if people can tune in and start to listen and start to just learn, not only about themselves, but learn about your siblings, your kids, your partner, like that's a lot of good information, because then you can kind of feel into I'm a feeler, but feel into like, what are they going through? Like what's going on in there, or what is it that they want or don't want?
Yeah. And when we can start to use astrology, right, not just for like, yes, for interrelational, like in relationships, but also using it in our business in just like really practical ways. So it's not like just this tool that you have to play with on the side, but it's actually a strategic tool that you begin using and stepping into.
Yeah. And you have the whole year Starcats. That's what it's called, right? The Starcats.
Yeah.
Will you share about that? Because I know that they can go on your website and they can buy that still, correct?
Yes, that is true.
Okay.
So every year at the very end of the year, I offer something called whatever the year is in the stars. So this year is 2022 in the stars, and there's different levels of support with the 2022 in the stars. At the base level, we have the calendar that has a digital plugin and all kinds of tools, so you can start to plan your year with ease. And then at different levels, you get different support with me, whether it's one-on-one astrobrand sessions or also new moon readings.
That's awesome. Yeah, I think everybody should really tune in. Make sure you tune into the podcast, of course, but also you have a book, because I actually, before I even did your course, me and my daughter actually worked on your book together during the pandemic. Yes. So I had done all of that. I have it all filled out too.
Oh, beautiful.
But I think that there's a lot more that people can tune in, one with your podcast, but also your courses. And I know they're going to shift in this new year, this 2022. Is there one that you are going to be sharing coming up soon?
Oh my goodness. Yes. I'm so glad you asked. Thank you, Monica. And I'll give you a link to share with your people.
Okay.
But the courses that you took with me were Written in the Stars, which is a introductory mini training on how to learn about all of the symbols in your chart and what they mean. It's not about interpreting and putting things together, but just imagine like if you're in middle school and you were in middle school band or orchestra and you were learning how to read music, and you had to first learn all of the little symbols before you could start putting things together. That's what Written in the Stars is. So it's like if you're new to astrology and want to learn the different symbols and what all the different lingo is, or even if you are really know astrology really well, but are looking to be able to implement these tools in your business, Written in the Stars is my introductory course and a prerequisite for the other courses that are coming up during the rest of the year, which is the Star Powered Position, Star Powered Voice, and then my certification program.
Yay. I'm so excited about all of them. And Star Powered position. That's the second one I took. I think for everybody, just so you know, it's, and Leslie touched on this, is it really helps you think about like your brand colors, who you are, what do people see and what do they want to see, and how you can really embody it so that you can show up as like a shining star. I really think that's powerful, because once you know that, I mean, a lot of stuff I will say you already know, right? Like intuitively, a lot of people know, but they don't have the confirmation. That's what I say. They don't have the confirmation like, oh yeah, now I know I was doing that.
Or I like to see, like, what I love seeing is people being able to specifically differentiate what they're doing, right? There's like so many yoga practitioners, there's so many different types of health practitioners and nurses. And how do we talk about our own unique ability and approach that is different, that differentiates us from others in our field? I don't believe in competition because there's more than enough for everybody. And so it's about differentiating ourselves so that we can really call in the people that we are meant to serve based on our own unique imprints.
Yeah, so, you're so good about like asking. I remember when you asked me, I'll never forget, you're like, what does transformation mean to you? I'm like, oh, it means shape-shifting. You're like, and I say shape-shift a lot, and people are, and they're the people that understand are like, okay. But that's a big thing, is that you are really good with like easily asking, and then all of us students going, oh, this is what it means to me. You know?
Yeah. Well, it's interesting, right? Because we'll end up using so many different words like empowerment or transformation or alchemical, like these words that can have so many definitions. And so we can choose to use those words, but then now we have to define exactly what that means for us and how we approach it. So I'm always pushing people to be a little more specific.
Yes. And I love you for that, because it's really important, because we can be so vague. It's like, what's power, what's transformation, what's empowerment, right? And people want, I've actually had people say they want to, use those words. I have a master class coming out and they're like, empowerment healing session. I'm like, what does that mean?
Yeah, what does that mean?
Yeah. But it goes back to that. It's like, what we want to be more specific, in tune with ourselves, and then share from all those three parts, right? That's what we want to do. Okay. Exactly. Is there anything else you want to share before I say goodbye?
Oh my goodness. It was just so fun chatting with you, Monica. Thank you. And if anybody's interested, you can head over to my website, thesavvyluminary.com, to learn more about my podcast and just what I have going on, or on Instagram at New Moon Creative CO.
Oh yeah. And the New Moon Creative Instagram, I love seeing all your little things that just very easily you can look at and go, oh, okay. That makes sense. I connect with that. So make sure, yes, follow her on Instagram, go to her podcast, please. And then I will have the links in the show notes so that you can check out some of her courses and books and stuff. All right. Thank you, Leslie. I appreciate you so much.
Thank you, Monica.
And I'm going to come see you soon in the city.
Yes.
Love it. All right. I'm going to stop.